Okay, so first of all, I think I'm gonna start off by saying that this is like literally my first review of any game that I've done during the history of my channel. So bear with me, please. And that's whenever it's due to, because that's the type of content I wasn't interested in creating, or basically the games I played previously. I guess I just didn't have much, to say, or interest. It wasn't really interesting or something like that. But here with Dragon's Dogma 2, a game that actually, broke the padlock and made it first. So here we are. I guess I'm covering it. So I spent 80 in-game hours, and that was only my first playthrough. I went really into this one. To fully clear the map. Try to do as many quests as I can, side quests. There was some quests that I don't think was even working out for me, especially the spellbound one regarding the spell girl Trisha. Just would not activate whatsoever. So I don't know if it bugged out or what happened. I could not clear that one quest if I really wanted to. But it is what it is at the end of the day. And so I would often check every day about a website called howlongtobeat.com, which is basically a website that users can submit their time. Depending on the play style they have or how they played it. And one time I checked, it was still during fairly early release. So for Dragon's Dogma, there was the only one and only submit at the time. Someone beat the game in 34 hours. And I thought, wait a minute, am I also close to beating it as well? So I think I was maybe 20 hours in or something like that. Or did you just, rush the main story quest and just called it, It's just the reason why I raise this sort of thing, raise awareness. I don't understand why would someone would pay a full pledge price for a AAA game to just skip content and to just do the main story. I just never really understood it. There's just more to this game than just the main stuff. It's you're definitely missing out on stuff. You're missing out on the rare loot, special boss encounters, unique zones, side quests. But I thought were actually some of them were pretty decent. Actually, it wasn't just some stinky fetch quests or kill some of these mobs and come back. No, some of them were I say pretty decent and actually voice acted. Believe it or not, yes, I say voice acted. That is not a common occurrence for side quests to be actually voice acted. So there's that. In terms of world building, what the world we were going here, I don't know how to really describe it. I think it would be something like linear open world we were going for here, which is absolutely crazy because I played actually games that are linear or open world, but this one I don't know how to really describe it. It's quite a head scratcher for me, but it just works, I guess. Bethesda, And on the topic, you obviously have the whole wilderness as well that you can collect items for, basically, and you have a whole crafting system as well. That you can craft you can craft items basically for healing, stamina recovery, or to remove debuffs, basically. You also have stuff like fire camps you can take, which recovers this also has this system where if you just constantly take damage, it removes your max health threshold, basically. So essentially, if you have let's say 1000 max health, if you just constantly take damage, it deletes it can go really low sometimes. It can go below 50%, basically. And it can go let's say from 1000 to 400, and it would cap that amount of health, basically, until you rested, basically, until you made a camp or went to an inn. to recover that thing. So that's a fairly unique kind of mechanic that's in the game. It kind of promotes you to either be good at the game and not take damage, or if you just take too much damage, you kind of have to be forced to rest basically. But you can also grab like a different piece of meat from like the boss enemies or just wildlife in general. You can grab and cook, which gives various other bonuses to like attack power, defense, increase, and stuff like that. You have chests as well, which is one of my personal favorites. And in games like these, where you can open chests to find loot. And then with this game did definitely trigger my OCD quite often when there's a chest out there, and I could not just get to open them because, I just could not navigate myself, or there's no other way other than just, outright flying there, which I was not able to do because I was carrying a fighter class, and at the time I had not figured out that you can use a harpy flare, which could have helped me maybe fly up there, even though it's not the best really in terms of options. Another thing I want to bring is probably one of the big deal breakers for me personally. And I thought, who thought it was a good idea to not put in climbing or swimming into the game, and yet you have a stamina system. It's literally those is why you have those sort of things. Is that if you're climbing, you run out of stamina, you just fall off because you're just tired. Swimming as well. It could have, it could have been introduced so well. It would have worked so well. But no, none of them is in the game. It would have been perfect. So a clever way that the developers made it so that the player cannot bypass, going into the water or the water that's too deep, is this plague-infested water. Is like these red hentai tentacles would capture any basically living being if ventured too deep. And so, believe it or not, the water looks completely innocent but to the naked eye. But once you really venture too deep, there's something wrong with it. There's why is this? There's like a bunch of red stuff underneath, and yeah, that's what one way to do it, and they did it. You would get introduced to this sort of thing very early into the game as well. So, so that you get the idea that water is no basically. Into the kind of like the main story, I guess. Honestly, I couldn't really get into it myself, really. I feel like in terms of like when the characters move their mouth, I've noticed as well, like when the first I met once we, fall over from the Griffin, or when he gets shot out and you talk to the first soldier, the mouse would just, these yapping mouse had like minimal effort required in terms of like animation. I thought, well, if this is like half-assed, then how can I give, can I be immersed into into the story? Although it's a poor excuse, but still. Sometimes you would get like cutscenes playing, which is yay. I'd probably say it outright, but the story of this game is not the main focus. It's definitely the gameplay. You just out there, exploring. There's dungeons also in the game. There's a lot of them, in fact, with multiple entrances as well. And sometimes I think visual showcase. It's pretty fairly detailed game, with exception that it does have some visual bugs to it as well. I mean, I ran into them numerous times already. I mean, I've seen actually mountains and rocks just flicker before my very eyes. I see people have seizures while they're just standing there. So it's there, but I think those sort of things would get fixed. And in the end, I mean, it's in terms of story, your title is pretty much you are the real Arisen, and there's a fake one that's pretending to be the fake Arisen, and you're there to venture out to find him and peel him to show dominance. And a very old dragon at the end that likes to just old people like to in real life because we are old and lonely. So you are the arisen, and you control like these pawns, which they call you master, by the way, which is interesting. These are the like completely custom made. People can just create them by other people, like like appearance, like what class we're playing, which is kind of, it's called, I think, like vocation we call them in this, but basically it's class. I mean, and you can sometimes just see them strolling around, and it doesn't matter if it's nighttime or daylight. You'll often see them. Sometimes they get into fights and we're trying to to survive. You can help them out. Sometimes they also like would like to stop you and be like, and give you an introduction, like, hey, I can speak Elvish, and yada yada yada, and stuff like that. And you're like, cool. But there's also other ways you can recruit them. You can find these rift stones out in the world, and spend this special currency called RC, which is rift crystal basically, and you can find these rift stones, which you can outright just look around and see which ones caught your eye and recruit them. Or there is forgotten rift stones, which basically is like summons like one by default. A player, basically a pawn, which costs nothing, but they usually tend to be really good in terms of like matching your skill, even, or maybe even better. So the forgotten ones are usually really good. But basically, how these pawns function is that they out there to help you along with the travels. I think it's very nice rather than being solo. I think it's a nice company to have them around. But I swear, like if you throw your main paw, let's say from like the cliff, or throw them into the water where they just literally drown, and revive them at the rift zone, they would still apologize, for being a burden. That's one of the things I noticed. I don't know if that's, I mean, it would be the Japanese, but it's literally in the game. So your functions, you can literally you can pick them up, like I obviously mentioned already, and throw them. And if you want, there's like an obstacle that you can't reach. Let's say like there's a tiny hill and there's like a ladder that you can drop down. You can throw them, obviously, and they would kick the ladder down for you. And one other thing is to really take care of your main pawn as much as you can, just as much as you do yourself, like putting the best slot gear and all the best weapons. The main pawn is as equally as important. You should always give them everything: best in slot gear, rings, items like healing, anti-poison debuffs. They do actually use them if they have anything infected. Like they are pretty, I would say, programmed pretty well, I would say. For the other two that you hire along the way, if it's Rift Zone or just outside, I would absolutely not worry about them. Don't give them anything, and don't strip them either. I don't think it's not gonna do anything at all. So I would just leave them as it is, and instead I would just make them like as your storage pawns basically. Also during my playthrough, I noticed that a strong meta was in a game. But most of the people on the main pawn chose class mage. Like I'd swear it's probably like 60% of them that they chose it. And I'm not particularly a big fan of anything like magic related, since I don't know, I guess I just don't like the concept of it. But I always do acknowledge, that just in general, that magic is really powerful, or sometimes even overpowered in video games. If it has it, obviously. So mages, obviously, we have one of the best kits, I would say, in my opinion. They can heal, they can buff, they can debuff enemies. Have powerful magic skills. That's why I would even recommend the player itself to make a mage. It's kind of for the first playthrough, and that's because they have this flying skill, or levitation basically, that can basically, like I mentioned before, that why do we not have climbing? This would literally bypass it. Same as with the water, it can help out with that. If there's something in the way, it's a very tremendous one. I would say that mage is really, really good. Obviously, I went to fighter, but it is what it is. But you have like items like harpy flays, you can use them, right? But I don't think they're just as good. They just absolutely wonky. They barely last. It's just a no-go. And as far as you can also ask your pawn to fly if you have the levitation, but it's half of the time it just does not work, and you have to be really quick-witted about it, especially when we trigger, the conversation like, oh, I can help you out with this. It's obviously very high, and you have to really press go. At the moment we are speaking, it cannot be after. I think once we're done, we get confused and we start going to the main stuff or the main story, and we lead you on. So once they really start mentioning, you have to press go, and that would trigger them to do. But I would just have instances where my pawn would get up there and just later down the line just get knocked down by, a hiding enemy that we could not see it. It would knock him down. Okay, we kill the enemy and then tell them to go again, and that's it. We can't do it again. I cannot trigger to him go. They just stand there confused and like, okay, I guess we're just moving on. And so it happens. Another deal breaker that could possibly be, I don't think it bothered me that much, but it could be a deal breaker for some, is that the pawns, they do talk quite a lot. They're pretty vocal, especially if you're running with the full group. They do talk, they do respond. If you're really running a long playthrough, obviously it is possible that you can do solo this, but I really do not recommend it, since once you can play solo, I don't recommend it, especially if you come like across a group of enemies, and they just attack you all at once. You're literally gonna get stun locked in place with no ability to run away or fight back. You're just there, gonna be on the floor, stun lock, all that stuff, and you're just gonna basically die. So having at least one pawn in your group, I think, is very essential. I think 2 is doable in terms of like challenging. 1 is playing by yourself is doable, obviously, but it's something I would just only do for like a challenge run or something. But for first playthrough is not something I would absolutely do. There's just no way. So obviously, when I said that pawns will start repeating like certain words or sentences, sometime down the line it will start, it may get annoying, but this is something I've heard already, why are you saying this again, type of thing. But one of the things that really stuck out for me is that when we keep saying, if you hire, let's say, like only men or women, they will point that out all the time. It's like it's done on purpose or something. It's not a deal breaker for me, but I think one time I did get triggered somehow by that. I don't know why. I think I was just frustrated just in general, I think, in the area I was at the game. But it's really not a big deal. So the one that they said is like, oh, our party mostly consists of women, yet none of us are the same. Or when, someone else's pawn says that their master also hires women only. Interesting. Like stuff like that, basically. So yeah, I think it's literally also the same for men, but yeah, like if you hire, like we start pointing out stuff like that. Also, the AI pathing on pawns can be pretty bad, and I would definitely make advantage of the wait button, which tells them to stop in their place so they don't move. Like, let's say you're traversing some complicated, maneuvers like climbing, or there's water nearby. Try to be cautious. They can literally just jump into water and drown himself, same as well as just jumping off a cliff and kill himself. But there was instances where they would jump off a hill and the game would teleport them kind of back to the top. Sometimes that would work, and you can just pick them up from the spot where they fell from. Sometimes, but I had an instance where we just literally kind of spawn inside like a wall, and I just could not get to them. So those things happen, but in general, I don't think like many game like bugs or anything that sort of thing happened at all. I would say that performance is that, yeah, the performance on PC is not the greatest. I myself don't have the beefiest. It's like a mid-ranger, I would describe my PC, and yeah, it's not ideal. I think if you want better like performance, I think there's mods like on Nexus mods perhaps you can download that could increase performance. Not something I've tested to see if it works, but I've seen others tested out, and we had really significant frames boost from those mods. It improved them a lot. So I did not mod my playthrough at all during my first playthrough. I only wanted to do it on with kind of the game settled down like 2 months in or 3 months in, then I'll jump with the mods and like do a fresh playthrough. We did also do an update. It was like 1.6 gigabyte update, but we fixed a lot of various bugs, and as well as changing like well, the game did start with a lot of complaints that has why would there be microtransaction in a single player game, but I think that's just Capcom's way of doing. I think they done it in Resident Evil, Devil May Cry. No one batted an eye when they done to those. But when we notice it's in Baldur's Gate, oh, that's a completely different story. So this game kind of got picked on because I think of the performance. If we found that like the performance is bad, we're gonna start lumping more issues with the game, and they brought in microtransactions, which is very unfortunate. Because look, if Devil May Cry 5, Resident Evils were good. None of them complain anything about them having microtransactions, right? So this game got unfortunate, but it really doesn't deserve. I think the game can be in a much better state for sure. Also, you can now start an actual new game if you want. Before the update that they did, you can only literally have one save. So let's say you screw something up, like, oh, you didn't like how you created your character, you want to change one thing, or maybe the class you started, well, you could not do it before. Now you can do it. Now you can, finish your first, you can start the second, straight from a new game. Also, like when I was talking about the pathing, the pawns, yeah, we can literally die. And you would have to, if your main pawns, you can obviously respawn them for free. We would just revive, but the pawns, the other people's pawns that you recruit, they would die, and any items that we had on them would disappear, but we would just go into the storage. So you didn't technically lose them, but you only lost them until you obviously reached the point till there was a storage. So you have to really be cautious of that sort of stuff, but it's not really a deal breaker at the end of the day. So now with the goal with the enemies, perhaps I've heard a fairly common complaint that there's a lack of enemy variety, which is, I would say it's true. It's definitely lacking for that, but it's not something that really bothered me that much, like whatsoever. The only thing that bothered me the most is like these bullshit enemy types in like these quantities. Very noticeable in more like mid-game, end-game areas, that these very hard to take down enemies, and they just literally would just, they just smack you down and constantly stagger to the point, there's literally nothing you can do except for your allies maybe to, come out and help. And don't get me started on flying units. hate every single one of them. There's numerous types of them, but every one of them is just god tier awful. So if I could, I would just put a rope around their necks with a magnet attached so that the Earth's central core would just pull them all in, choking them all to death. That's how much I hate them. In terms of boss types, I think I would filter them with the the purple health bar that appears. I think you can see it's boss, I guess. I had if there's one thing I would exclude for sure is that fighting them commonly is not ideal. I was not a fan of that sort of thing, but my expectation was once you fight one of them, that would be it. That's just one occurrence, one special moment that you had, right? But no, they do respawn. You will encounter more of them. For me, the most special fight was for sure Griffin. The first time I fought, it was a really nice, epic fight. Out of all the bosses that was in the Griffin, for me was a personal favorite. And yeah, I just could not understand as to why that was, that we would respawn or you had to fight numerous of them. I thought fighting maybe 2 or 3 in total, same boss types, is completely fine. But more than that, it gets, pretty repetitive and boring. But yeah, I mean, it is what it is. And you just would, also during the whole playthrough, I never really found, the game as being this repetitive or boring. I was just always keen or curious to, to see what's waiting next for me, in terms of progression. The zones, I would say the zones did not stand out for me, at all, except maybe for the desert area, because the visibility is much clearer, so you spot out, for example, things like chests from distance, so very good for a loot goblin like myself. Also want to give bonus points to the depth that the class system has. We all feel very unique and standoutish, even class, maybe except Archer and Magic Archer. Yes, there's Archer and then there's Magic Archer. I guess the Magic Archer just shoots magic arrows, I guess. But yeah, even classes like Archer, which I think in my opinion is one of the lamest you can possibly have. I mean, how could you possibly make a class that shoots a bow and arrow cool, right? And this game literally just turned it around and made it actually all classes cool, and all as well as Archer. All of them are cool and unique. Archer is cool. The class I was playing, obviously I was rocking only one class on my character, which was fighter, because I liked the concept of the shield sword combo, kind of tank unit basically in a way, MMO or whatnot. I changed my pawn 2 times. I originally started with her with Archer and moved her into a sorcerer and then into mage, because I thought that's literally just, I think, the best class honestly in the game. And so yeah, but those things I call just vocations. You unlock more along the way as you play the game. There's more of them, but I'm sure I'll be probably forgetting to say something in this. But I just want it to be over in a sense. I think if I was to give this game a rating, I think it would be a strong, solid 8. I would definitely recommend this. I mean, if you're only planning to just do the main story only, maybe just grab it when it's on sale rather than full price. I think you're getting, regardless if you're planning to buy it on let's say full price, but your plan is to really explore the map, see all the quests. I think you're getting very good value. I think I got my value's worth for sure. But if you still want to grab this game on sale and explore everything this game has to offer, you are the winner basically. So yeah, in all, this was a very good, solid game. An 8 out of 10 is definitely a very good score. It's a recommend for sure. And yeah,